Question from audience. I have been pondering this question. In the past, I came across the self-strengthening movement, 1861 to 95, and one of its prominent figures was Zhang Zhidong. He wrote an article called Exhortation to Learning, which specifically discussed the idea of Chinese learning as the foundation, Western learning for practical application. The self-strengthening movement was guided by this ideology. Now, I wonder if this ideology still holds true in today's educational system. Wang answers this is a significant question because it stems from China's early contact with the West, rather than specifically from the self-strengthening movement. It has been an ongoing issue and a point of discussion for everyone. However, it seems there might be an erroneous understanding here. What is considered Chinese learning and what is considered Western learning? Are they so distinct and opposed to each other? Should we view these two as completely different things? Let me simplify it a bit. If a nation's culture is to be established on its own foundation, then it is acceptable to understand the concept of Chinese learning as the foundation. We cannot sever our culture and bring in something from the outside. We cannot cut off the roots of our own culture and attach them to another root. That is definitely not viable. So, if you say that the development of Chinese culture should be based on the life force of Chinese culture itself, then I think the concept of Chinese learning as the foundation can be understood. However, if we perceive Chinese learning and Western learning as entirely opposing forces, then it is a fallacy to interpret Chinese learning as the foundation in that way. Because in reality, the world that humanity faces is the same, and the problems humanity confronts are similar. Although each culture has its own developmental process, the fundamental problems are the same. If you have this level of understanding, you can see that Chinese culture and Western culture have many points of convergence. Let me put it this way: if we consider Chinese culture as a living organism, throughout its developmental process, it has constantly incorporated various additional elements. For example, take Buddhism. Although Buddhism went through a process of sinicization after it entered China, its foundation is still Indian Buddhism. Inside China, it continued to integrate. So now you cannot say that Buddhism is a foreign discipline, it is a core aspect of Chinese culture. If we understand the problem in this way, I think the question you raised can be resolved. The so-called Chinese learning as the foundation means that the development of Chinese culture cannot be separated from its own origins, processes, and organic life form. I think this understanding is valid. As for interpreting Chinese learning as the foundation and Western learning for practical application as Western learning being merely instrumental, a tool, I disagree with such a view. Western learning is not merely a tool, it has its own fundamental origins. Chinese learning is fundamental, and Western learning is also fundamental. Moreover, these two fundamental aspects can be integrated, they are not mutually exclusive. The fundamental question for us is how to seek methods for this integration. Question from audience: I have a question. When you were discussing the meaning of life, I was wondering if it could be done in that way. When we drive a car, we have a navigation system, but there's another question: we still need an engine. So, Professor Wang, where does your source of strength come from? Wang answers: right, where is the engine? Questioner: yes, we can't just rely on the navigation system, we still need the engine to drive the car. Wang answers: this aspect of Chinese learning is actually quite clear. It means that power is not something in the mind or a judgment of certain values based on the mind. Regarding value standards, you can always discuss right and wrong from a theoretical perspective. However, Chinese people place the value standards of life in their hearts, which is called the emotions of life. Chinese learning begins with the emotions of life when discussing the truth, rather than starting with logical reasoning in the mind. Confucianism Taoism, and Buddhism all share this approach. In the Doctrine of the Mean, 2nd century BCE, it is stated, before joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness fully manifest, it is called zhong, inside. Once they manifest and all are in balance, therefore in moderation, it is called he, harmony. The concept of zhong refers to our inner self, where all the emotions of life reside, including joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness. When they have not fully manifested, it is called zhong. In Chinese culture, when they do manifest, it means engaging with others, and this interaction is always accompanied by emotions. Once they manifest and are all in balance, it is called he, harmony. Zhong represents the fundamental essence of the world, and he represents the highest principle of the world. To achieve harmony, or zhonghe, means that the social order of society aligns with the principles of nature. It is the realization of a harmonious state where joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness, which are the emotions of life, are appropriately expressed, therefore in balance. This achievement of harmony leads to the flourishing of civilization and vitality. As stated, the heavens and the earth are in their proper positions, and all things flourish. I use this phrase from the Doctrine of the Mean as an example. In fact, when we read Confucian classics like the Analects or the Mencius, we are actually reading about our own experiences of life. Whether our children can comprehend the meaning of life in the future, it is not achieved by presenting them with several propositions and having them write them down as maxims to remind themselves. The meaning of life originates from their own emotions of life. To nourish and elevate these emotions of life, there needs to be a path, a good path. This is where Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, or the cultivation of virtue, all point to the emotions of life. For example, in Buddhism, it teaches never to despise others, as there is boundless sin in such an act. Huineng, 7th century CE, said, "To see one's own nature is an accomplishment, and equality is virtue." All of this is explained based on the emotions of life, not some logical axiom for people to understand. So, we want our children to read the classics of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, especially the Platform Sutra, to nurture and elevate their emotions of life. If the emotions of life are not well nurtured and elevated, they will descend into a lower state, and their emotions of life will be in a terrible state, rendering their lives meaningless. Indeed, Chinese thought has always considered humans to be the most lovely and also the most despicable. When ascending, humans can reach the divine and become saints and sages. However, when descending, they can fall into the realm worse than beasts. How is this difference created? It is through the emotions of life. So, to answer your question, everything we do is driven by emotions. If your emotions are inappropriate, they can lead to negative outcomes, even to what we might call sin, right? However, if your emotional state is appropriate, expansive, and uplifting, then nurturing your heart means expanding your emotional life. That state becomes greater, and my heart spans the universe. The entire universe is captured in my heart. What a powerful driving force. Wang Yangming said, "There is no truth or principle outside the mind itself is the source of all principles." This idea of heavenly principle isn't about logic or rational rules. Instead, it's about the genuine essence of life and emotions. In other words, truth comes from within the mind, not from intellectual reasoning. That's why he disagreed with Zhu Xi. Heart philosophy focuses entirely on the matter of motivation. Therefore, the growth of our children's emotional lives is the most important thing. Look at what they hate, love, and dislike. Are there many dirty, dark, and flawed elements in their emotions? In the Buddhist Sutra of Pure Land Rebirth, it states, "The Pure Land is the realm of a pure heart." Confucian scholars from the Song dynasty said, the initial thought is that of a sage, but the subsequent thought can turn one into a beast. These teachings all revolve around the emotions of life. Mencius spoke of the heart and the four virtues it possesses: compassion, shame, courtesy, and a sense of right and wrong. Each of these virtues is tied to the emotions of life. Mencius propositioned these four dimensions as the dimensions of emotional life. Therefore, Chinese people should feel fortunate in this regard. Chinese philosophy, essentially, is a philosophy of human life, and this philosophy is directed not towards the mind but towards the heart. Westerners rely on faith in God to establish their purpose, while Chinese people rely on their own hearts to find meaning, which is called finding peace and purpose in the heart. So this is us. You raised a good point, and if I say something incorrect, please feel free to add or correct me. It is indeed a matter of motivation. Once that motivation arises, things can become significant. Just like Wang Yangming's philosophy, establish your voice, your actions, and your graces, it is evident that he had a sharp intellect, right? It is certain that he was not unintelligent. However, what truly enabled him to achieve great things was his response to unexpected events, such as the sudden rebellion of the Prince of Ning, which he successfully suppressed. If his emotional life lacked strength, would he have been able to accomplish such a feat? Indeed, he serves as a shining example for us. We may appear ordinary in comparison, but the power of emotional life is of utmost importance in such matters. So sometimes when I discuss the Chuan Shiluo with everyone, I say that Wang Yangming's thoughts can actually be summarized in 3 phrases. The first is, the heart is the principle. The second is, the intertwining of knowledge and action. The third is, the realization of innate goodness. The realization of innate goodness is fortified by practice, and vice versa as we engage in practice. Thus the heart aligns with the highest principles of heaven, and stops only at the ultimate good. So, these 3 phrases, understanding that the heart is the principle, is crucial, as it involves nurturing, fostering, and enhancing our emotional lives. The second phrase, the unity of knowledge and action, means you cannot just understand a principle in your mind without acting on it. If you don't take action, then you haven't truly understood it. It's not a part of your heart. What you truly comprehend in your heart, as it becomes part of your emotional life, what is that? True knowledge. It is a longing of the heart, like a love for beauty or a dislike of foulness, right? That is true knowledge. Then, the realization of innate goodness is about honing oneself through action. I believe these 3 phrases are sufficient to guide and inspire us in our reminders and assistance to our children. As I mentioned earlier, teaching children to fulfill responsibilities, when you're sick, having them serve you soup, that is teaching them how to cultivate their moral sense. Moral sense is not just something spoken verbally. That's what I wanted to say.